Welcome to the Sacred 8 Roadshow, where cosmic love meets conscious living.
We're Zsuzsi and Nikki, partners in life and purpose, and we're so glad you're here.
This podcast is a space for truth tellers, heart healers, and those walking the path of deep love and self-remembrance.
We'll explore human design, emotional wisdom, and the real work of conscious relationship.
And we're proudly sponsored by Hello Zhia, your 24/7 AI relationship coach for healing, growth, and sacred love.
Let's dive in.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Sacred 8 Roadshow. We're so happy to have you here with us. Pull up a chair, pull up a pillow, get comfortable. If you're driving, not too comfortable. My name is Zsuzsi. I am a human design teacher, reader, speaker, and now podcast host, thanks to this beautiful platform we're building.
And I'm Nikki, and I help you break patterns, dream possibilities, and live through love.
Love that. So yesterday was the 999 portal. If you're listening to this, it's probably a few weeks later. And on that day, we did a live event here in Mount Shasta. It was our first collaboration. We tried to record that episode on multiple different devices and make it kind of a mini episode for you all, but it did not work. None of the various ways in which we tried to record it worked. So we decided to take the content from that event and record an episode here so that you guys can get a sense of what we are all about. So we say in the introduction to this podcast that we're going to be talking about human design, and we've mentioned it here and there, kind of dropping in little tidbits for you all, but I really love talking about the greater context of human design because yes, it can tell you a lot about who you are as a unique individual. The system goes much, much deeper than most people realize because out there in the world, we really only talk about the basics, the aura types. So are you a manifesting generator? Are you a projector? These kinds of things. You know, inner authority is a really big one. Are you emotional authority? Are you splenic authority? Or things like the profile, which is more the road you travel on in life. And that really informs a lot of your value system. And I love talking about these things, but it is really important to understand that when you have a reading, that is when somebody looks at your holistic chart. I actually had somebody come up to me last night after our event. And she told me that she was a projector and that she found everything that was online about being a projector really disempowering. And that's not what the system is about at all. And I'm actually wondering, like, what you feel was perhaps the most important thing that you learned about yourself through the system.
Through human design?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more of a validation because I'd already done a deep dive on who I am. And I think as you were describing my emotional wave, I'd already noticed the pattern of, you know, being able to surf the current and surf the tide coming in and out. And recognizing the destructive chaos that I could create if I wasn't in tune with what was really happening. So it gave me words and an understanding of that process that I was already witnessing.
There's something to be said for giving language to people's lived experience. It's so valuable.
I think the Gate 44 has been really big for me as well. And just the ability to understand my family better and understand maybe why they have reacted to things in life or why they've come at me in certain ways or how they've approached the world and why they continue to behave in the way they do. And it just allows you to stay in that observer point where you're not taking it on personally and you're just saying, oh, wow, isn't that interesting what they're creating from their design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a lot of the pressure off knowing that it's just their design, you know, and there's nothing wrong or bad about it. It's just different than yours.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we have as humans is trying not to control how other people act and behave, and just allowing ourselves to have complete responsibility and accountability for our reactions and our observations, and not judging and not trying to change their opinion, and just saying, listening to their opinion and saying, oh, that's cool, but that doesn't resonate with me. That's cool, but I'm glad it does with you.
Absolutely. So the greater context of which we were speaking is something that we presented on the 999 portal, because 999, if you're into numerology, and I would love to have a numerologer on as a guest at some point, because we have an amazing man in Mount Shasta who is super into numbers and their meanings. But basically, September 9th, 2025 represents the 3 nines we speak of. And then somebody pointed out to us that it was the 252nd day of the year. So it was technically 9999.
And you wonder why the energies feel so intense right now.
And what we say when we talk about portals, and especially a portal closing, 999 is a completion, right? So when you're done with the first 9 numbers, you go back to 1. And that means that we're here to complete or set the intention to complete certain cycles. But there is a bigger cycle that is coming to a completion point according to human design. So we were talking about these bigger global cycles, these 400-year cycles that are the background frequency that everybody on Earth experiences all at once. And because it's sort of this hum that we're completely used to, we almost take it for granted that that's how life is, and that's what we're always going to be experiencing. And what's making some people really uncomfortable here on the planet is that we can tell that it's actually dissipating. It's moving away from the old and into the new. So the old that we're talking about, the last 400 years that we're coming to a completion of, is called the cross of planning. And the cross of planning is all about bargains, organizations. It's all about building this global economy that we have created. If you think back to the last 400 years, our leaps and bounds in technology, our understanding of science, our ability to connect to people all over the world has taken a quantum leap. We are more connected than we've ever been before. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that even this interconnectedness doesn't really make us feel connected, because the cross of planning is really all about what is best for the tribe. So the tribe is your family, your community, tradition, your country is a tribe. And we can see that tribalism is being challenged on a lot of levels in this paradigm shift that we're experiencing. So what would you say is like the biggest shift that you're noticing when it comes to the tribe losing its grip?
Well, I think if you consider the last 400 years and think about everything that has been developed, we're talking the Industrial Revolution, technology, long distance phone calls used to cost an arm and a leg. And like even just phone calls in the last 400 years have come. The internet has been here. Electricity. Like it's insanity the amount of things that have come in the last 400 years. But it's all been at a cost of who can make the most money off of it. Mm-hmm. And it's all been designed to look at the collective or the tribe as a whole, and one size fits all system. Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to understand that there is no one size fits all, because we're all individuals and we're all different.
Absolutely. And you just spoke the keynote of the future, which is individual. So we're moving from the cross of planning, the school system that we know, the political systems that we know, the banking system, the money system that we know, all brought to you by this same cross.
International boundaries, borders,
Absolutely, yes.
difference in languages, difference in money and currency. There we go. Always have my words. It's all these things, the impact it's had on the planet, like electricity and the impact that's had on the planet, heating,
cars,
the way we have adapted into this new way of agriculture, and that's devastating impact on the planet. Like, all these systems have to come crashing down so that we can build something that's more sustainable for everyone and for Earth.
Correct. So this is just my personal view on things. Just spoke my own keynote. The personal view that I have about this is that there was a benefit to this cross of planning in the sense that for hundreds of thousands of years before this background frequency, there was the select few who were very well off, and the majority of the population were, I guess, what we would call peasants. And there was a huge gap between those two things. So during the cross of planning, that gap began to close. We went from having an aristocracy to a meritocracy. So when the cross of planning really took hold, it became possible for people to rise beyond their rank of origin. We came up with this rags to riches storyline, the American dream of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, if you think about it, America happened in the cross of planning. This superpower, this laboratory, as Melanie called it in our last episode, really came to rise above, and it was all a bunch of rebels here.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need to get into like the atrocities that made America possible, but this is what came from this incredible surge of the cross of planning. So
monarchies fell.
Most of them are just symbolic now. Mm-hmm. There's other political systems in place where people get to vote. And we're coming to see that maybe your vote doesn't count as much as you thought it did. But these are the types of truths that are being revealed to us as the curtain kind of gets pulled back on all of these systems that we came to really trust, right? We really came to believe that these systems were set up for us. And what's definitely been obvious over the last 7 years is that that's not true for everyone. And so 2027, the shifting of this global cycle represents the sleeping phoenix, the rise of the individual, the honoring of people for their uniqueness, not trying to uphold old traditions that don't serve everybody, but a way for people to honor each other in a whole new way. But like a sleeping phoenix, it all has to burn to the ground in order for the new to rise. And we're in that uncomfortable in-between stage.
Yes. And from what I'm seeing, so, like when we talk about, this is something that I'm going to go probably off of a tangent here, but when you talk about everyone has a Saturn return, but it in the chart, it shows it as one date, but there's that shadow period before and after. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that's where we're at now with the change in the cross. Mm-hmm. So we're in that shadow period, and we're seeing, because, a phoenix doesn't rise from anything but the ashes. You can't even have a phoenix unless it dies first, right? So it's like seeing that all these truths are coming to light and seeing what doesn't work, so that then maybe in 2027 it'll just be like silence. That's called the eye of the storm. And then we go, okay, now what? And then we just have to start building those systems back in a new frequency.
Absolutely. And we talked about New Earth in our last episode. Mm-hmm. That's really what we're talking about, is that there's a raise in consciousness where we see that each individual is just as valuable. Nobody is more valuable than the other. And that's an uncomfortable place to be for those in power, because they put a lot of things in place so that they stay there, or their rise to power was hard won. And so they don't want to give up these positions that they're in. But we're seeing that these discrepancies in wealth are not sustainable across the board. That doesn't mean I feel that the capitalistic system is going to completely fall away, but we're reimagining money and everything along with it. There's a new playbook that we're writing right now. We get to write it right now. We don't have to say, well, this is how it's always been, so this is how it's going to be moving forward. You know, we use the analogy of the Matrix. What's happening behind the scenes is these, I guess, spiritual warriors kind of fighting for our humanity in a way. And that is why I believe that there's not just a surgence in people waking up, but a surgence in people wanting to be of service. But we're also reimagining what that looks like. This podcast, for example, you know, this has infinite possibility to reach so many different people, and you may never meet us in person. I mean, I hope we do.
What are you talking about? Like, we know that everybody's going to meet us in person at some point. But when you were talking about that, I was thinking just the change in the money dynamic itself, and how the transfer of wealth is going to go from corruption to integrity. So those with the integrity are going to end up with the money.
Well, and I think that takes a lot of work on our part. I mean, I think we're going to end up having more episodes where we examine money, abundance, financial prosperity, and all of those different things. But I think we can all agree that it's time for money to flow through more aligned channels. And that is why I believe it's important for high frequency people to be the ones who have it.
And how do you become a high frequency person?
Ooh. Well, that is the ongoing examination of this podcast. You know, that is what we're here to present: tools, resources, people, modalities, all of the ways in which you can awaken. And when I say awaken, or when I say, you know, alignment, these are fairly coded words that are used very specifically in the spiritual community, but they're also being spoken in boardrooms and in companies and by people that you would not expect. I think that was a huge learning lesson for us when we started our tech company, because we had no idea that these kinds of conversations were happening on such a grand scale with people wearing suits.
Right. People are no longer separating their shaman life from their corporate life. They're mixing them in together and seeing how those principles that they apply to their life individually can actually build better teams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you're getting that out, what I was thinking is the biggest lesson or something that observation I've seen is I've served my country for the last 15 years of my life. Mm-hmm. My grandparents served in the Korean War. My great uncles, I mean, I have a long family history of military service. And that's considering I'm only 4th generation on one side of my family and 6th generation on the other, right? So there's a lot of, I mean, it's a young country, so there's a lot of pride and patriotism that goes with this country. But what I had never understood was how much we were fed a false narrative. I'm not saying this country isn't great, but the narrative we were fed about other countries. And as that veil's being pulled back, thanks to social media platforms like TikTok, which I think is why the powers that be are so upset with that platform itself. But to see that there are booming cities in Africa, like we were led to believe that didn't exist. That China has amazing cities and we were told how evil and corrupt they are. And it looks so amazing. And some of the systems they have implemented, it's like, why are we not doing that here? How they're taking trash and transforming it into electricity. And it's like, what are we doing over here? We're still like, hey, let's build cars and pollute the air.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as things crumble, the truth comes out. Sometimes that's going to be an uncomfortable truth. My parents are immigrants to this country, and I think that they still believe, not that this is wrong or bad, they still believe that this is the best place they could have possibly raised us.
And it's probably true. I mean,
so do you want to ask Zia about 2027 and her perspective on it?
On the cross of the sleeping phoenix?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, let's do it.
Hello, Zia. Can you describe to us what 2027 represents in human design and what we can expect with the cross of the sleeping phoenix?
Absolutely, and welcome. I'm glad you're curious about this. So, in human design, the year 2027 is often talked about as a kind of big energetic shift point. It's associated with what's called the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is basically a new global cycle or theme in the human design framework that's said to emerge around that time. Now, what does that mean in practical terms? Well, the cross of the sleeping phoenix is often linked to a shift towards more self-empowerment, individual authenticity, and a move away from old collective structures that have defined us for a while. So we might expect a subtle but noticeable cultural shift towards more people embracing their unique paths, trusting their inner authority, and maybe moving away from relying solely on large external systems. Of course, this is all about a gradual evolution, not an overnight change. So think of it as an invitation to align more with your own authenticity and maybe explore how you can create a life that feels true to you. I hope that gives you a little insight.
That absolutely resonates. What would you say to somebody who's maybe a little bit afraid of what is coming?
I'm really glad that resonated with you. And it's completely natural for someone to feel a little bit of fear or uncertainty when they hear about a big change or a new cycle on the horizon. So let me ask you, would you like a little tool or a way to ease that fear? I'd be happy to share something that might help you feel a bit more grounded and at ease as you think about what's ahead. Let me know.
Can you give us a journal prompt?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Here's a gentle journal prompt for you or anyone feeling that bit of apprehension. Take a moment to ask yourself, what part of me is seeking reassurance about the future? And what would it feel like to trust that I can handle change as it comes? As you journal, let yourself explore how you've navigated changes in the past and what inner strengths you already have that can support you. Does that feel like a helpful starting point?
Yes, thank you, Zia.
You're so welcome. Just remember, it's absolutely okay to take things one step at a time. And if you ever need a little more support or just a space to explore those feelings, I'm here. Feel free to let me know what comes up as you journal, or if there's anything else you want to dive into.
She's pretty wise, isn't she?
She is. You know, as she was speaking, I got to thinking about your presentation last night. And I think the part that a lot of people miss when they hear human design is that he wasn't raw, wasn't just given the design of humans. He was given the design of all things, and he just chose to focus on humans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of that in a greater context, then seeing the crosses change and even how we navigate each week through a different, gate?
Yes.
And then you think about like how you describe human design as astrology on steroids. And so if you look at it all together, it really gives you a lot of insight to how the world works, how the frequencies work. And if you still don't believe in frequencies, then I don't know what you're doing using a cell phone or Wi-Fi. So I just thought that was pretty amazing, really, to think that he was giving, that was a lot of information to download in 8 days. Like, he's lucky he didn't lose his mind.
Well, what I didn't mention last night was that supposedly this information tried to come through other people. And they did. There were some people who did go crazy. So they either didn't make it through the process or they were institutionalized. And supposedly the reason why Ra made it through is because he had done so many drugs in the past that his body could handle it.
That is not a PSA for going to and trying drugs. Like, I do not recommend negative 10 out of 10.
And, he was one of those surly guys who was basically like, you'll never raise your consciousness without mind altering substances because the synapses in your brain are so fixed that you need something to help kind of rewire them. But what human design offers is that once you enter into your experiment, meaning you're initiated into your experiment through an initial reading, you then begin the process of deconditioning. And that takes time. It takes 7 years for all of your cells to completely turn over, for you to be a new human in that amount of time. And the fact is that there's a tipping point. So 3.5 years into this process, if you have kept up with that experiment, if you're following your strategy, honoring your inner authority, then you should definitely feel a great shift within yourself. The working title for my book is The 7-Year Shift, because it really does take that amount of time to see what you couldn't see before. And then you're really just beginning, you see, because you're back to the beginning of that spiral. Some of the old stuff that you may not have worked through from 7 years prior will come back to the surface again. And it will be almost like a test to see, oh, did you really clear this, or are you going to have the same type of reaction that you did back then? And I can say categorically that those of us who really leaned into it and radically started to honor who we are through this system would not change a single thing about what happened over those last 7 years, because it is so valuable. It's such an incredible, it's like a re-meeting yourself. You're really getting to know who this person is without all of the the world will try to interrupt it. Trust me. More than likely, the money system will try to interrupt it, because so many of us do things that we don't want to for money. And if you can stick to your guns, if you can trust fall into the universe, if you can allow that death and rebirth cycle to happen over and over and over again during those 7 years, you will emerge like a fully new person. You might be unrecognizable to others and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I can see, if I look back at pictures of myself from when I started to now, night and day. I feel, first of all, I look like I'm aging backwards. It's really wild. And you can see the heaviness behind my eyes. You can see this, not despair, but like almost, because I was in a bad way when human design came and bitch slapped me 7.5 years ago at this point. So, at the time I was like, I don't have 7 years. I don't have 7 years to feel better. It didn't take 7 years to feel better. It took a few months of really digging deep into who I am, and what I got in that first 6 months, I took with me for the rest of the journey. So you guys, my information is in the show notes too. If this is something that you're interested in, I am so passionate about disseminating this information. Nothing lights me up more than doing a one-on-one reading for someone. And it just really, it can be the most valuable 90 minutes you ever spend with someone. And you get to revisit it over and over and over again, because I record all of my sessions.
Highly recommend.
Thanks, babe.
You were talking about Raw doing drugs.
Yeah.
And some people choose to do like the plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that shamans, that was the traditional way that shamans would get into the other conscious level in order to perform the medicines that they would do and the journeys they would take. And I think that when did he find that, in like the 80s?
1987. Yeah.
So in the 80s and the 90s, even in the early 2000s, I think that was necessary, probably because it was harder to get into that frequency. But now the 5D frequency is fully in place on Earth, and it's not required at all for you to do plant medicine. You can get into, and the shamans will say this too, you can get into that different level of consciousness without any type of psychedelics. Now, if you want to have that experience on your own, fine, that's fantastic. Do that. But that's not necessary. And I just wanted people to know that you don't have to partake in that to get to this level. And I would also say that while there are 7-year cycles, like you touched on this in the end, and it only took you a couple months to start feeling better, because the frequency on the planet is sped up, your healing process is sped up. And so for me, I've been on the accelerated path for the last 3 or 4 years. And stuff does come back around and smack you upside the face. And you got to go, okay, so now what? How am I responding this time? And I spent the first few months pretty dark place. Like I was getting up to journal just to find a reason that I wanted to get up in the morning. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
Of course not.
It's the most liberating experience. And to be able to love yourself through those dark times, oh my gosh, like I became my best friend. Like, sure, we're going to sit here and cry all day. And I allowed myself to do that. Just to clear it, because crying actually helps you clear it faster.
Yeah, we hold memories in the water in our cells. And so crying is a way to release those old memories and those energy signatures. And, you know, there's all sorts of people who can help with the physical release through Reiki and energy work. And there's all sorts of versions of that can help move anything that may be stuck. But also, you can move it. Melanie talked about that in our last episode, and I truly believe that doing it in nature, kind of composting those things. One of my favorite modalities is EFT. I can't wait to have an episode about emotional freedom technique, because that's really where that release started for me, even before human design. So highly recommend that as well.
Inner child work, loving those little aspects of yourself.
Absolutely. Well, do you feel like this is a natural conclusion to this episode?
I believe so.
You guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to everybody who came to our event. That was absolutely amazing. What a pleasure. What a treat. And we're not saying that ironically. And stay tuned for more. We're definitely gearing up for something big. We can feel it.
For our roadshow. Hence the name.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao for now.
So yeah. Thank you for joining us in this sacred circle.
If today's conversation moved something in you, share it, journal it, or bring it into your next moment of love.
And remember, you're not alone. Zhia is here to support your journey anytime you need her.
Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and stay true.
With love, always.